You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
Moscow black markets and sex shops near me. Crackgirls.com and liquor delivery. 5-MeO, DMT. These are a few of my favorite things. This is, of course, my impression of Hunter Biden as Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. If The Sound of Music was about Julia Andrews finding a laptop and searching a bunch of weird things whilst hiding from the Nazis, Urban Outfitters and online clothing, MILF crack whore trailer training, and addiction rehabs that let you snow ski. All right, there's probably too many weird terms for me to fit correctly within the tune of The Sound of Music song featuring Julie Andrews, which is a play that I honestly bring up a lot in reference. And I don't know anything about The Sound of Music at all. I don't know shit about it. And I know a while back I said whenever I watch The Sound of Music, I am so conservative that I've made Pinochet blush and I empathize with the Nazis whenever they're in that specific musical number. But really, honestly, if I'm coming clean with you, if you couldn't tell based on my tone that I am not a ardent and popular theater critic, I actually have never seen The Sound of Music. I have no idea at all. I just thought it would be a funny way for me to rattle off some of the insane searches that Hunter Biden has put into the internet. And because I am not confident enough in my Steve Harvey impression to rattle off Hunter Biden's search terms in a Steve Harvey Family Feud style joke. Because that was my first plan. I was originally going to do, survey says, here, show me free MILF crack whore training, here. You know, I didn't feel like I had enough Steve Harvey there. I didn't feel like I had what was needed to do that justice, because a lot of these terms require specific reading. And, you know, if I can't do the accent correctly, I would be doing the public a disservice, because I am also not the news, and it is important that you know that I don't matter at all, whatever I say, but some of it is actually accurate. And some of the terms that Hunter Biden put into a laptop with his own fingers are as follows: chakra back tattoos, the Finger Lakes, Etsy.com, free MILF older trailer skinny fucking whores, crack cane MILF skinny fucking whore babe, Google.com, CVS open near me, pizza delivery, porn, theblacktrainer.com, playwithme.com, Kardashians, Elie Wiesel Award, Azerbaijani Highland Jews, crack cocaine, addiction rehabs where you can snow and ski, Haley Biden porn, and unconditional love. So that might have been the saddest, but dare I say most innovative postmodern piece of poetry you've ever heard ever. That is something that would make E.E. Cummings shed a tear. The fact that a Hunter Biden, and we'll get into a lot of the weird ones like Elie Wiesel Award, which is the guy who wrote Night and just like was happy his dad died when the Nazis were telling him to walk far or something, was one of the weirder, funnier terms that Hunter decided to look into. But we should also have serious questions like, why the fuck were you searching Moscow black market president's son? Do you have an answer for that? Do you have an explanation? And I'm sure the explanation, the reasonable, rational, obvious looking you in the face, idiot explanation for why Hunter has created a situation more stupid than maybe any in history before. The answer to that is very simple. We don't need to look far. We don't need to really look deep inside of ourselves to try and understand the psyche of someone who has grown up in such a very weird and specific environment like Hunter has. The very obvious answer as to why Hunter has done what he has recorded himself doing, which is arguing with hookers over if they stole a little bit of crack. How much does a baggie weigh? And having 7 to 8 children in Thailand kiss his body. The answer to all of that can be answered in a very simple, he's on crack. It's crack. It is, I'll say it again, he's on crack. That's going to make you have clouded judgment. And I didn't recognize it at first either, because it's insane. His entire life is insane. The latest, well, obviously not the latest is the newest laptop stuff. But before that, we were all upset at him because he is, obviously a painter now who was doing a bunch of business with Chinese companies or oil companies in the Ukraine. And I was like reasonably mad for reasonable reasons. Like, hey, you're the president's son. Don't clearly be leveraging favors and just money under the guise of pretending you're a painter and trying to convince me that the Chinese Communist Party is actually interested in your fucking watercolor painting. But then, the weirder the stories got, the more I started to think about it, and the more I realized and focused on the fact he smokes crack. That's it. That's the reason for all of it. If you're wondering, why would he record himself? Why would he only do things that could hurt his father, who's the president? Why would he do all these things that are illegal, but he could easily get away with if he didn't just, hit record on a camera? The answer is simple. The answer is crack. Don't cut that as a soundbite either. The answer is not crack, but it is for Hunter. It's the only explanation. And then I started to think, what if this dude actually believes, he's so delusional in his head, that the Chinese Communist Party is actually interested in his art. They do actually believe him to be a very talented painter. That the Ukraine does believe him to be the next coming of Michelangelo. I genuinely think Hunter believes that, because it's the only thing that makes sense. Because every single thing about him is hard to believe. And sure, every American crime/political family has the fuck-up kid. That fuck-up kid doesn't always marry your dead sibling's wife, or at the very least start an affair with them post-car crash, but every family has a Chelsea Clinton or a Hunter Biden. But Hunter is a very specific, just baffling type of stupid, because the stories don't even make sense. You don't want to believe them. If you were to tell me, hey, the president's son had a laptop, a MacBook, mind you, which he decided to take to a computer repair store in Delaware, a MacBook, and he not an Apple store. He didn't take it to a Genius Bar, which is what anyone would do who owns a MacBook, anyone who owns an Apple product, because I would assume that's a pretty strong indicator that you're not a garbage person. Don't you ever text me with that green message bullshit. But anyway, if you were to hear a president's son took a laptop to a computer repair store, which probably pawns VHS tapes and is next to a pack and ship, and then forgot it forever. One, you would think Hunter would have an assistant or someone who would do that. Two, who the fuck goes to these random computer repair stores? They look like they are in the weirdest, potentially haunted neighborhoods you've ever seen. And third, why would the laptop seem to only be containing things that are incriminating or could be blackmail evidence? What's that all about? You notice there hasn't been leaked any business plans or proposals or decks to present to different companies about how we're going to take your money and how I'm going to sell information and influence to my father and vice versa. Apropos, I'm a hoe, crack cocaine. No, none of the leaks are about legitimate business shit. They're just the random rambling musings that a crackhead has put into Google at random hours of the night. CVS near me, blacktraining.com, Zurovsky's Russian Empire. What is going on in this dude's head? Because you want to think, constantly, I think the human brain wants to make sense of what's going on so you don't die. Now, with this Hunter thing, you want to make sense of it. Is the president's son involved in shady business dealings with foreign countries? That's a reason to be worried. That is a fucking compromising thing if we're, a country with enemies, which, based on current events and nuclear tests happening in Russia and nuclear drills and safety precautions being rolled out in New York, there are enemies. So if you're like, hey, the president's son is doing shady business dealings with these people, what's going on? I should be worried. But then the story plot thickens and you're like, this guy literally left this information and just to be found. He just dropped off and said, hey, public, here's all my misdeeds. You'd be like, no, come on. He really did that? Yes. You'd be like, no way. Hunter Biden actually typed in online clothing? Yeah, he did. That was one of the search terms on there, along with Haley Biden porn, which, is a family member of his. It's all just crack. It's very tempting to want to connect dots and to say he's actually the cog in this evil wheel that is a plan that is doing this, that's fucking that, that's affecting gas, and it's the Democrats. It's not any of that. It's not George Soros. It's not the powers that be. It's not anything other than good old-fashioned American crack cocaine, folks. I think he genuinely thinks he is the most talented painter since Michelangelo, and he has let's say, a habit of using crack and a habit of soliciting prostitutes of all ages. I don't think it's anything more than that. In a weird way, this new Hunter Biden leak where the videos are insane, the search terms are remarkably unsettling. The weird thing about all of it is it's almost kind of made me think, I don't really have to be worried about Hunter anymore. There's not that much of a loose end. How much of an impact could this guy really have for the collapse of a civilization that is America? I don't think he's capable of doing anything coherently for more than 35 seconds. If these search results and the leaks of the videos have really taught me anything, it's that I don't think he's that big of a deal anymore. I think we can actually, believe it or not, relax. We don't have to be worried about Hunter that much. And if anything, and I'm obviously not ruling out that there could be stuff that's way worse that could still be coming, but a lot of what is truly the worst things you could get caught doing publicly have already been revealed now. So it's not like China has anything else that they could really blackmail or hold over his head, because we've seen him with children and crack. So unless they have a snuff film, some avant-garde snuff film in which he beheads a Filipino escort for some reason, I don't think we need to worry about the loose end that is the painter anymore. So it's kind of a sigh of relief in a weird way. He's just on crack. He's not a threat to national security. He's not potentially a double agent. He's not anything other than someone just, on the pipe. So breathe easy. You can relax. The president's son is not compromised by a hostile foreign nation. He's just on crack. Cool it. It's just a little crack. But speaking of the Bidens, the doctor in the family, Dr. Jill, she recently compared Mexican people to tacos, so that's less than ideal. I've said some pretty strange things. I have empathized with the Nazis in The Sound of Music. I have said monkeypox is not racist. I have said very envelope-pushing things, but I've never compared Mexican people to tacos. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not the news, but I am telling you that Dr. Jill did compare Mexicans to tacos. And this is just a speech that she was reading. I am going to assume that she didn't write this speech. She was at some conference for an organization which is the most important in the country for Hispanic visibility within, whatever. You know how every group has an organization that meets and has a lunch once a month. She was at the most important Hispanic one. And in the speech where Dr. Jill was talking about just how important diversity is, she compared that diversity using a very eloquent metaphor relating the Mexican population of Austin, Texas, to the variety of breakfast tacos available in Austin, Texas as well. Dr. Jill was saying, what makes us great is our diversity. And diversity is just like a taco. And that makes sense because the diversity, since we're in Texas, has to do with Hispanics, not black people, right? Or is this another crime bill, private prison luncheon? I want to make... Who is in charge of this prompter? Are we sure this is the right speech? So that was just amusing. That was funny. And I'm sure Beto O'Rourke is upset. But it was pretty great. And hey, I'm not here to like point sides. There's nothing worse than when like someone on the left, some popular Democrat does something that's racist that for some reason now the public catches. I hate whenever like Jesse Waters or whoever, like the dude on Fox News with the most punchable face, he'll do a story where he's like, can you believe that like Dr. Jill said this racist thing? That's not fair, because at the same time, he'll have a segment explaining why George Zimmerman was correct. But it is worth pointing out that it is still racist as fuck. It might be laughed off and forgotten, but she did compare Mexican people to tacos. And if you could believe it, the leaders and the representatives of the organization were none too pleased. They thought it was Malo. They thought Blonde Punta could get off stage, okay? Because she strolled into that'd be like going to like the Italian Conference for Visibility or whatever and saying, diversity is like meatballs, and you're all meatballs. You meatball? That might be hilarious, and no one gets mad at Italian racism, Wap Guinea, but still racist, and you shouldn't be racist, I guess. I don't even know if that is a popular held belief anymore, but who's hungry? And speaking of losing confidence, I'm not the only one who has lost confidence in everything. At this point, I'm just amused by the fire that is ablaze while the world burns. But the New York Times has now lost confidence in Joe Biden, which is pretty big. That's pretty, important. The New York Times, which, at one point was America's newspaper, the Panama Papers, they were doing important shit. As the years have gone on and Trump came into power and everyone lost their mind and we might have slipped into an alternate timeline and CERN might have opened up a gate to hell and done a cloak and dagger ritual outside, not but last week. Since times have gotten weirder, the New York Times has also gotten weirder. They've said some things that are pretty stupid. They have taken stances that are inaccurate and they have retracted stories. But the New York Times published a story where they now have lost faith in Joe Biden. They've said he's too old. That's crazy. The New York Times, it's like the biggest, a media Democratic established outlet that is. They're like the thing, has said they don't have confidence in Joe Biden, which is them saying the New York Times will not support Joe Biden as he runs for re-election potentially, which it's becoming more and more clear no one thinks he's even going to bother with. The New York Times thinks he's too old, and Kamala was caught slipping up saying if he runs again, which probably has her, because she's borderline Hunter Biden level delusional, thinking now she has a shot at the throne, because she's been killing it as vice president. She was put in charge of the Mexican border crisis and promptly took a trip to Ecuador. It's weird that the New York Times would essentially say we're not supporting the incumbent Democratic president. I don't know who the Democrats think they're going to put up next, but they should probably figure it out. And at this point, I'm thinking there's a shot that it's going to be Bradley Cooper. You heard me correctly. That's yes. I didn't forget to transition correctly. I am a fan of non sequiturs. I think Bradley Cooper is angling for the White House. Bradley Cooper has started dating, because this is now a podcast where I talk about that. Bradley Cooper has started dating Huma Abedin. Now, if you know who Huma Abedin is, she was the executive producer of Frazzle Drip. She was Hillary Clinton's top aide, and her father, Syed Abedin, was, because he's since died, a tremendous academic leader and organizer in the Islamic world. He was actually someone who a lot of people credit with creating and overseeing the Muslim Brotherhood, which, debating who you ask, is hand in hand an organization that is the business side of al-qaeda. Who is to say what Dr. Syed Abedin actually did? I'm not blaming him for anything. I do find it a little weird how whenever there is a nefarious character or event in American history, that somehow Saudi Arabia has worked its way into it. In this case, Huma's dad potentially being the face of the organized section of al-qaeda. And hey, people have pasts. That's what it is. People are complex. But I say all that to say I think Bradley is eyeing the White House. That is my bold prediction. Because Bradley Cooper be popping up in stories that Bradley Cooper has no business popping up in. You notice anytime Dave Chappelle has an incredible, moving, thought-provoking speech or stand-up special, for some reason Bradley Cooper's name gets dropped in there? It's weird. Bradley Cooper at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he was the only white guy when Chappelle went to see Obama. You know, it's weird that Bradley Cooper pops up in all of these seminal, influential moments in time, and now he's dating Huma Abedin and is the first male in line for the Shiite throne. I think Bradley eyeing the White House. And I am very, very uncomfortable with the fact I think he would win. I think people have no reason not to vote for him. He is clearly deeply entrenched in the DNC at least and would have their backing. He would have the backing of the entire Islamic world. And he played Chris Kyle where he shot a Muslim kid. So he has all of the Republicans on board. It's dangerous that I think Bradley Cooper making moves. Keep an eye on the guy from The Hangover because he might be in charge of al-Qaeda and the president soon. And that might be, I think, the thing that takes the cake for the most ridiculous sentence I've ever said. But what's the funny part about it is I don't think it's entirely based in nothing. And it's not good when politicians or presidents or prime ministers or whatever synonym your country uses to actually mean president. It's never good when the guy who takes over that job or woman is someone whose previous job was in entertainment. You would think that's always bad because it happened, with Trump, and now he might go to jail. Or you could look at Zelensky, who, if you're not positive, the guy who's the president of the Ukraine fighting Russia, who was doing a great job. Everyone loved him. He was a fucking comedian before he was president. He did dick jokes on Ukrainian television, and now he's fighting Putin. And to his credit, it seemed like he's doing a decent enough job. But then there's some news out the Ukraine. There is some news out the Ukraine that Zelensky, former comedian, current wartime president, has decided to eliminate rival political parties and consolidate television news channels. So that is a familiar thing that usually means something is about to happen. You know what I mean? It's never good when a president's like, hey, you're my rival, you gotta go. Hey, you're the TV station that says the things I don't like, you're off the air. That's never good. When has that ever actually been an indicator of a good wave of fortune coming to a nation? Ever. That's never happened in the history of ever. That being said, I guess, I've been defending Zelensky. I like him well enough. The Ukrainian people are so much better than the Russians. I'm on their side. But man, you're pushing it, dog. You really can't. If we're already worried about Bradley Cooper becoming president, this is a reason why. Bradley Cooper cannot be cozying up with Huma, trying to work his way into the White House, because whenever an entertainer becomes president, they end up doing stupid shit, bad shit. They end up getting themselves arrested for insurrections, or they end up censoring rival political parties and media outlets. And I hope I'm wrong, Zelensky. I hope you prove us all wrong. But as the war, quote unquote, with Russia goes on, which really wasn't supposed to last more than a fortnight, it gets suspicious to me when you start censoring dissenting opinions. Because that suggests that you don't ever want to leave. And you've made it clear you don't want to leave. The U.S. offered you a chance to leave and come here, but you've decided to stay on the front lines and take pictures. Why would a president, the guy in charge, be on the front lines? The people on the front lines get shot. What exactly are your intentions, and what exactly are you doing? Not what your media team has deemed worthy of telling me what you're doing. What are you up to? Because the Ukrainian office doesn't have the highest integrity historically. You had a president within, the last 5 years who it turned out was on Russian payroll and has fled and no one knows where he is. And I really hope you beat Putin, and I really hope Putin doesn't launch nuclear missiles at everyone, causing a third world war. But I really, really hope that this isn't all some Russian shit orchestrated from the beginning to just bleed Americans dry, rise gas prices, And it turned out they had a guy installed who used to be a comedian, who are historically people of great integrity and backbone, who march lock and step with traditional society, to all of a sudden, as the war goes on for the third month, censor media outlets that would ever challenge him. I'm not saying nothing, but it don't look great. It definitely, and I'm going to be honest with it, the fact that Zelensky has started outlawing, rival political parties and media outlets, that has me a little bit more worried than whatever Hunter Biden's doing. Because whatever Hunter's doing, I imagine, is limited. The damage can't be that great because he's on crack. But Zelensky is a president of a country, a small one albeit, but one that literally is currently the powder keg. He's doing some very suspicious shit. And it's not suspicious by, like, my standards, because anything is suspicious by my standards. It's suspicious in the sense that, like, any dictator who's ever been one has done this at some point. And as this war that's not a war goes on into its fourth, fifth month, the war that was supposed to happen overnight, as it drags on, as we approach fall and then winter, we now have entire European countries bracing for a lack of gas, bracing for a lack of heat. And it gets motherfucking cold in Germany. I would imagine I'm never going to go there because Nazis. But the point is, the Ukraine, and it might be unfair, is literally the reason European countries are bracing for a lack of heat this winter. And I'm all for freedom. I'm all for sovereignty. And I definitely don't like Russian people. I think I have made that abundantly clear. You don't have pool? No, I fucking don't. Do you want to join the gym or not? As these issues compound, snowball, if you will, all puns intended, you begin to wonder, why is this war dragging on? If it was supposed to end in the blink of an eye, if Russia has doomsday submarines, nuclear missiles, and NATO's really worried if they get any funny business going towards the Ukraine because they have enough to just take it immediately. That was not true at all for some reason, and it continues to just drag out. And as it drags out, other countries are affected. We're starting to see gas prices that are normally $5. Inflation is fucked here, and most of Europe is bracing for a winter without heat, all because the Ukraine is still putting up a fight with Russia. Because Russia is the number one gas supplier for Europe, and they have a lot of oil. So it's pretty easy to see how those things have affected us. And that's because of the Ukraine. Now, I love the Ukraine. I really do. I stand with them. Shout out to them. And again, fuck Russians. But why is this not over? I don't want the Ukraine to be lost. But at some point, shit or get off the pot. I can't keep retweeting things with flag emojis of your country if gas is $6. It would almost lead one to think, wait a minute, it seems like all of the worst possible things that lead to a war are happening. Inflation, gas prices, natural gas shortages, populations concerned because entire parts of economies have been fucked with over a conflict people by the second are losing track of. It's weird to think all of that and then see the fact that the former comedian, now president, Zelensky, has outlawed rival political parties and media outlets that say things he doesn't like. It's just weird. It's strange. The thing that should have happened immediately keeps dragging on and making it worse for everyone. It's like a virus that just spreads, and we have dealt with fucking enough of them. Do you know what I'm saying? So the fact that New York City was running nuclear missile safety drills where this is what the public should do in the event a nuclear missile is launched at us, we're not saying that's going to happen. And this has nothing to do with what's going on in Russia or the Ukraine. But this is what you do in case a missile gets shot at us. And that missile would only get shot at us from Russia because they don't have the Ukraine yet. Why don't they have the Ukraine yet? I thought that would happen fast. Let me see what's going on over there with the news. Wait, it's all censored or taken away. I can't even find out what's happening in the Ukraine unless Zelensky has stamped it okay. And he has the time to stamp things okay while being on the front lines fighting the most and current evil villain the world has to offer. And the previous president of the Ukraine turned out to be in the pocket of Russia the whole time. These are weird questions, and these are the types of questions that if you have, you would like to go to the guy in charge and ask, like, the president. But even the New York Times doesn't have confidence in him because he falls off bikes and is, their words, too old. But I have one question that I think is bigger than any of them. I think this question, if you can find the answer to this, if you know the answer to this question, you don't have to worry about anything else. Everything else is trivial. Everything else is nonsense. This is the big enchilada. The big enchilada, Joe Rogan. This is the gestalt. The big question, and if you know the answer to this, all of these other confusing questions in the world will be solved and become very clear to you. The question I ask you is this. Do you know how much a baggie weighs? Or any local sex shops that deliver near me? And where the fuck is that laptop?